In this impersonal world of ours, pretense, I think, is put at a premium. We expect pretense, I think, from all of our public figures. It's par for the course for politicians to act off stage as well as on, and certainly we expect it from our performers. And when someone appears on the scene who does not quite conform, there are difficulties. I'm thinking of one who was perhaps the most celebrated actor in America, Marlon Brando. And through the years, we have an image. We who read the papers, read the gossip columns, and I think everybody does. He may deny it, but he does. Who hear a commentator on the radio or see someone on TV talking about a public figure who is always fair game. We think of Brando as a man who's had difficulties, who has been difficult to be with. Because somehow we have a feeling that he is not, some of us suspect he is not pretending. And pretense, we value this so much. So when someone comes along, and as I noticed yesterday, I was deeply moved. It was an experience I rarely had. Listening to Marlon Brando being faced by 300 kids who were editors of high school papers and a few university kids. And there was no pretense. A man was talking to his peers. Marlon Brando was in town in conjunction with the forthcoming production of his film, adaptation of a letter of Burdick novel, The Ugly American, that'll be opening in a week at the Roosevelt Theater. And I was thinking, Marlon Brando, this comment of mine, does this make sense to you?
Well, it's very pleasing to the ear and to the feelings to have such nice things said about you. But I feel that in your naming of those agencies and people that do have pretension, I think you left out one, and that is ourselves. I think that pretension is certainly a universal characteristic of man. I don't mean to speak in such broad philosophic terms, but within the realm of my own experience, I see pretension in myself. I think that anyone who pauses for a moment and examines his motivations will find sometimes that they are not all what they seem, that our motivations are complex and they are not as simple as we would like them. And I think in a world where pretension exists so to such degree, we can only conclude that the whole is equal to the sum of its parts, and that each of us, in his own small way, contributes to the aggregate pretension, the national pretension perhaps, by his own pretensions. We don't like at all to keep these things inside of us. We don't like to admit these things. We would much rather say we're right. And conversely, there are many people who would like to say, I'm always wrong. Whores, pimps, criminals, alcoholics, unfortunates, psychopaths, people suffering nervous breakdowns, tend to deride themselves in the same way that people who are oriented to a superior point of view, as a result of being so terrified of issues and conflicts that I think was so well stated in this in the poem by I can't remember his name. It was Dover Beach. Who wrote it?
Okay.
But anyhow, he said, "For we are hearers on a darkling plain,
Matthew Arnold.
swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night." I think that perhaps poetically and accurately and concisely describes a pervasive condition in man. And so I think it's so, we tend to make heroes out of people as we tend to make enemies. And we like to think of ourselves as pure, as Christian soldiers who are marching onward, or aesthetic philosophers who are braving the rigors of confusion and man's eternal despair and his sufferings at the hands of ignorance. But it's not nearly as clean as that. And even the most high-bound intellectual people, the most esoteric thinkers, at least the ones I've met, I think I have experienced something with them that perhaps leads me to conclude that that communication with oneself is very, very difficult thing to achieve. And usually if you talk to someone long enough and delicately enough, you eventually will find that there's an inconsistency with what they say and what they feel. Or, on the other hand, there is a consistency with what they feel, perhaps they don't know, and what they say and what they do. And but that interaction, that interrelationship between what we think of or what we do and how we act and what we believe and what we feel is very often passes and we don't see it. They're just ships that pass in the night. And in that respect, I feel that we must include ourselves in
As pretenders.
Yes.
As pretenders. There's something you said just now, Marlon, Brando. We think so much of difficulty today in people communicating one with the other. You were just making a point that I feel of some significance. Difficulty in communicating with oneself. That is, we ourselves, you spoke of people on two sides of the bar of respectability. Those respectable, quote unquote, and those beyond the pale. And there's pretense on both sides of the fence here. So even the individual himself, this you found to be the case, I'm sure you speak for probably mankind. Each one finds who is the guy? Who are you? As James Baldwin often asks, who am I? The difficulty of finding out who you are. It's not, I'm sure it isn't your problem alone, though yours is perhaps more dramatic because you are so celebrated a figure.
I didn't quite understand.
Who are you it seems to be your quest, finding out who you are. Isn't this basically the quest of all people? Isn't this yours specifically?
Well, I don't think it's the quest of all people, generally, no. I think that is it's the quest of a few people. There was a book by Gerald Sykes that was written recently called The Hidden Remnant. And in this book, he discusses issues that touch very pertinently on this theme. Since time immemorial, it has been the advice of those who are wise or pretend to be wise, or the disciples that have written down what they consider to be wise observations about life. And most of them, I think, can be summed up in the famous phrase that the unexamined life is not worth living. And that the beginning of all wisdom is in self-knowledge, and that each man is a reflection, or that the world is a reflection of oneself. And certainly today, it behooves us more than ever to examine these things. So often people say, well, don't tell me I don't know my own mind. I certainly do. The infinite delicacy, the gossamer, the ineffable smoke-like quality of the mind to rationalize, to justify its own feelings. If you hate someone, well, let's examine, for instance, the hatred of the Negro by the Southerner, or the hatred of the white by the black Muslims. If you examine, you talk to Elijah
Muhammad.
Yeah, Muhammad Elijah?
Elijah Muhammad.
Elijah Muhammad.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the phrase used.
I see. You will find contained in his dialectic of hatred the absence of hatred. You will find that there is no visible evidence or statement of hatred. And yet the position certainly is one, that of someone who is uh, reacting to suffering. The uh, uh, the reasons that he gives are perfectly true, 100% true, but the motivations are different. The motivations are completely different, and very often people can be 100% right for 100% wrong reasons. And when you ask I was talking to a woman the other day, an airline hostess, and she said she came from Georgia, a southerner, and I said, do you believe in separate but equal
Facility.
facilities? And she said, yes. And she said, no, I believe in integration. I think that they ought to be integrated, but I wouldn't want to. I don't think that the races ought to mix. I don't think that the races should be mongrelized. And I said, why not? And in the course of the argument, which I won't relate here, which was too extensive, it really wasn't an argument. It was an exchange of views. Finally, when she came down to the last analysis of her assumptions, it was based on what she felt. It was not based on anything of what she thought, because as she reached out to find reasons and justifications, it wasn't the cleverness of my dialectic that defeated her. It was just a simple observation of a few obvious facts, such as the perfectly wonderful example of integrated living that has taken place in Hawaii, which is the mixture of perhaps three races, 3 or 4 races, and many different nationalities. And that is perhaps the most salient example of what can happen. And it's perfectly delightful to behold that society, because it's a complete living documented contradiction to this mongrelization point of view that is so often expressed. But nevertheless, returning to what we were talking about, it seems to me that the average Southerner has a very difficult time, as does the average Northerner, in inspecting his real motivations, because we don't really like to express, to admit that we are confused, or admit that we are frightened, or admit that we are full of doubt. We don't like to. We like to just blot it out and say, no, that condition doesn't exist. I know my own mind. Don't give me any of your 25-cent psychoanalysis. Well, and perhaps that's absolutely right.
Thus we rationalize, and use the word rationalize. Rationalization becomes so easy, no matter who we are or where we are. Rationalize we have been conditioned perhaps to feel or think in one way. I'd like to be a little more specific now. This, I think, is a perfect prelude to what we're talking about. You yourself are an actor, are a performer, and I think we've been conditioned to look at celebrated figures a certain way. People who, the word I'm looking for really is adjustment. The performer adjusts in that he is sweet before his audience. He behaves according to a set pattern. He is glib in a particular way, or if he isn't glib, he has a public relations handout that he parrots and reads very well. Now you come along and apparently upset what might be called the apple cart. I remember a piece in Variety a few weeks ago. You were being quoted as speaking of the actor as being a product, a thing, a valuable thing. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that was it. Yeah. And rather than being a human. And some actors can accept this, but you find it difficult to accept this, being this valuable property is the word used. You are a valuable property, Marlon Brando. Yet the difficulty here is you are also a man. Do you remember that quote of yours that appeared in Variety a few weeks ago?
Yes. Well, in regards to that, I think that we must have, in order to profit, I think that it is one thing to blame and to criticize. But as we do, perhaps we do that, we must realize that these observations that we have always apply to ourselves initially. And because the tendency, of most people seems to me, and most nations, oddly enough, is to say, well, the enemy is out there. The evil is out there. The negative factors are outside myself. They have nothing to do with me. If now, for instance, most of the Negroes in this country are rightfully and justifiably concerned with the outrages that have been perpetrated against them ever since they came here as slaves, and they have a perfectly decent, justifiable, ethical ground to stand on and to support their claims and their desires. But and I don't mean to qualify that for at all. But if we examine, for instance, the history of the oldest republic in the the Western Hemisphere, it is the Republic of Haiti, which was formed many, many, many years ago. I think it was in the 15th century. Men like Henri Christophe and Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines and all those great Negro ex-slaves who threw off this colonial yoke and established their own democracy, patterned after the French. Well, today, any cursory examination of Haitian history will show that it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, or whether you're oppressed, or whether you are free, or no matter what you are. The fact is that they have yet to be able to establish a kind of government and a kind of a pattern of life that is wholesome, because there is starvation, there is terrible social inequities, and the most distressing maldistribution of profits and wealth and advantages. And in all those years, they have never been able to do it. So we can't assume that just because these things are lifted, that everything is going to be all right. Now, here in America, we have all the advantages that we could have everywhere in the world, anywhere in the world. We are a living dream. We are just a perfect example of what can be achieved and what the benefits are of an integrated industrial society that has all its wants satisfied. But we're all nervous. You and I are sitting here. You were concerned about these things, and all these articles that you publish here in this magazine, or the interviews that you have, or the interest that you have. You were concerned about these issues and the truth and what is going on with people, and what are people really saying. And you are awash with doubts and concerns. And you are not at rest. You are not at peace. Your personality does not remind me that of some of the Tahitians who I've seen, who are peaceful people, the Eskimos, or some other people. I am not either. And I think that we are representative in many respects of all Americans who have all these advantages but do not have the essential ingredient, which is a sense of well-being and a sense of peace. We don't have it. We certainly aren't raging neurotics. We certainly aren't psychotic. We're not extreme, despite what publicity might say of us. But nevertheless, we still are missing something. And it's that ineffable, indescribable X quality that we really must have. And it certainly is not in money. It certainly is not in the attainment of material goods and manufactured things, although we certainly pursue it through whiskey, sex, notoriety, success, money, television sets, boating, Kiwanis activities, good doing,
Playboy Club.
Playboy Club, perfect example, status images. We'll try to find it anywhere in the world that we can because we think it's outside, but of course it never is.
You know, Marlon Brando, it's fascinating the way you're answering my questions because you're coming back to this theme of self-righteousness or false values in our very selves. And values, you spoke of the Tahitians. I know this from what you said yesterday to the high school kids and what I've read about you, your feelings about Tahiti, and there must be a reason for this. And we who are materially well set, it seems, that the values we pursue then, something is wrong then with the goals, the lack of goal you feel. Is that it, apparently?
No, I don't think that's wrong with the goal. I don't think that we realize what the goal is. I think that the goal that all of us want is dangerous word. It's dangerous to generalize in this term because it's such a subtle issue, and it's like protoplasm or rather ectoplasm in its nature. But certainly we do not want strife. We do not want it. But that seems inconsistent with what we do because we seem to want strife. We seem to chase after it. And I think that perhaps, at least...
Pardon me, is it that we want strife or chase after it or conflict because perhaps in our very lives may be a drabness or a dullness without it?
I think that it is much easier to find an external enemy to fight than it is an internal enemy. Hitler is a perfectly wonderful, salient, eternal example of a man who was a paranoid. He was a man who felt attacked inwardly by his feelings. He was a man who had a crushing sense of inadequacy and purposelessness. He was a man who felt that it was necessary to conquer the world. And of course, what he really wanted to do was to conquer his own emotions, his own his own feelings of dread and fear, and his own feelings that one part of him was attacking another part of him. So he attacked the Jews. Now, as among all bigots, they will find a reason to attack the Jews or the Chinese or whoever it is. But he felt that it was necessary to attack these people. And then after he saw that the Jews were going to be killed and exterminated, which he did, 6 million of them, then it was the Ukrainians, it was the Russians, the Slavs rather, and he felt that they should all be killed. So they were being exterminated. There were some millions of them, I don't know how many. Then the Poles. But he had to exterminate all these people, get them out, because they were the enemies. And if he had conquered the world, if he had gotten the heavy hydrogen from Norway, had he perfected the atomic bomb and the buzz bomb, and assuming that he did conquer the world, you can be assured that he would have killed the Negro, he would have killed the Japanese, he would have killed everybody except the pure Aryans, or done something, done the most he could to destroy. And then finally, when he was left with the pure Aryans, then he would qualify what was purely Aryan, and eventually he would have been perhaps left with himself. Or he would have attacked the left-handed people of the world because their minds were diseased, that they were badly formed or something. But this man had to attack externally. Now, many Germans will tell you that he made important contributions to Germany because he came at a time when Germany was certainly economically oppressed and suffering. And it's certainly true. He did build roads, hospitals.
Mussolini made the trains run on time.
That's right. But we always like to have things neat, and of course they're never neat. And when we attack something, now I noticed something interesting. In the Freedom Riders, there was one man who went down there and was beaten up very badly. And he put a sign on himself when he came back that said, "I am a victim of racial prejudice. and he was a white man.
Mhm.
And he put this sign on himself and stood there with his head just listing slightly to the left with these great bulges and bruises and things. But he put himself on display as a martyr. Now, had there been no justifiable and reasonable issue of freedom riding to devote himself to, he might have found something else. It's likely that he would have found some other cause so that he could have had himself beaten and to a pulp so that he could hang a different sign on him and say, I am a martyr. And it's those things that attend almost all of our activities.
It's the labeling, then. The word labeling, perhaps, might be the one that disturbs you a bit.
Well, we like to, we're forever, not only Americans, but people all over the world, we're saying, we like to think that the trouble that we have is going to be solved by one thing or another. It's either getting all the blacks out of our way, getting all the whites out of our way and allowing us to have a decent life, getting all the rich people out of our way, getting all the disease out of our way, whatever it is.
Whatever it is that disturbs the individual, that is different from him, let's say, that seems different from him. You said something earlier about we want things neat and compartmentalized. There's a lot of questions come to my mind as you're talking, but let's stick with this for a moment. Want it neat and compartmentalized. I'm thinking of Jacques Tati, you know, the French
Yes.
humorist. And his whole approach throughout has been seeking the naturalness of imperfections, accepting the imperfection that is in life, you see, and that he is the non-adjusted man who, in a sense, is close to the natural man. That even though he upset the routine of people who wanted order, many people found in him and his presence a certain kind of joy they would not have found otherwise. Because imperfection is a natural thing. He says when the machine goes on the blink, that's when the man most enjoys it, tinkering with it, more than the man who drives the perfect car. In a way, this is related, I think. I'm thinking of this word adjustment. Robert Maynard Hutchins spoke of adjustment courses in school, how terrible they are. To adjust to what? See, to adjust to what? Who sets the norm of adjustment? Hitler wanted adjustment, and I know that you interested in Summerhill, the school in England, A.S. Neal. He spoke of tyrants come into being, or brutality comes from unhappiness. Unhappy people, in a sense, must find this out, must find this scapegoat that you're referring to indirectly here. Is what I'm saying related to what you've been talking about?
I think that perhaps the key word in your remarks is scapegoat. We all must find the scapegoat because we cannot accuse ourselves. It's too uncomfortable. It gives us a feeling of hopelessness to accuse ourselves of our iniquities, our inadequacies, or whatever it is. So we must find the face of that evil outwardly. As we were talking about yesterday, Joseph Campbell articulated that theme so well in the book The Hero with a Thousand Faces, because he traces the history of man's eternal search for the face of evil, for the face of good, for the face of virtue, and for the face of badness. The idolatrous and relentless search for God and the devil. Now, the face of God changes from culture to culture, from age to age, from person to person. And we have our own personal gods and our own personal devils, and we have our system of archangels, and we have our system of archdevils, you might say. And we worship them. And if you ask everybody in the world, what must we do to have a decent world? Some of them will say, you have to take women's rights away because the women are really running the country and they're really out to get you. They own 89% of the economy, and the laws are all in favor of the women, and that's what I think we ought to do. Somebody else will say, well, we ought to segregate all the peoples of the world and have no kind of mixture at all, and put the mulattoes and all the racial mixtures into one group.
South Africa,
Yeah.
apartheid.
Yes. Or everybody has a different idea as to how to solve the world. What is useful and what is not useful? What is good and what is not good? And the pursuit, not only the pursuit, but the implementation of trying to achieve that leads us in the eternal circle. Now, it seems so painfully clear that if the world were all a shining democracy, at least shining in the concept that most American thinks that America is a shining example of democracy, which I think it is not, then it would be swell. The communists think, well, if everybody was communized, it would be a wonderful world. Well, the minute that happened, the day that the sun rose on those circumstances would be the day that you would have people saying, fighting one another for some other reason, because the world has never been without conflict, and I think it behooves us now. Well, it's absolutely imperative that we do it, because it is one world, whether we like it or not. It might not be one world, but it's one planet. And it behooves us now to scientifically apply all our technology and investigative capacities to the nature of hatred, to the nature of man himself that produces the chaos in South Vietnam, or the murder of the American Indian in the Sand Creek Massacre, or the communist blood purge in Hungary. We have to do that, because we cannot, I think we can no longer go along with a luxurious and comforting concept that there is an intrinsic difference between the Russian and the American, or the Chinese and the Indonesian.
There's a theme here that seems to haunt all you're saying, that obviously is a theme that is recurring. I believe in your work, too, the saint and devil in all of us. In a sense, this was the theme of One-Eyed Jacks, was it not, to some extent, the film that you directed as well as played in?
Yes, it
to
wasn't.
Some extent.
It wasn't fortunately articulated in the way I'd wanted it, because.
But is this the theme you were seeking to some extent?
I wanted to show that the spectrum of good and bad exists in all people, and that we cannot dispense with it. We have a duty to Carol Chessman, as we have a duty to Dr. Schweitzer. We have to respect one another's weaknesses.
All that lives is holy.
And one another's hatreds. But we have to respect the nature of hatred, but we have to understand it in order to dissolve it. We cannot dissolve it by attacking it with hatred. And the age-old writ that says that we should return love for hatred doesn't mean that we should stand there and allow ourselves to be pounded into a pulp by somebody who was. It simply means, at least to me, that we should deal with it with intelligence and with perception, and not return in kind what it is. Certainly, we're not going to let Carol Chessman run loose and commit those crimes and be socially destructive as he was. But we must. He is a part of us. He is someone. Society did something to him. One thing that's pleasing and encouraging is the fact that the old concepts of sin and badness are being revised in the courts, because unbeknownst to themselves, the judiciary, the people who pass judgment on criminals and things, are coming to understand that there must be some reason that 15 or 5 young teenage people will stomp a crippled boy to death, stomp him to death, kick him, mash him into the ground, and expunge his life. Now, we have to. It's a mystery why we did that. There's no rationalization. There's no reason for that. We can't say that they're insane because we test them and they're not. We can't say that they're evil because they're not. They're just, we don't know what to call them. Eventually, we start hovering around the possibility that something is not right with these people, and maybe something's not right with our society. Now that's a good question, because instead of being broken on the wheel as they did in England and punished and flailed, which of course produced nothing, we are now trying to apply some of our knowledge gained in recent years to these extraordinary acts. But whatever we've done, it has resulted now in a swinging change, that a slowly growing arc that is aiming towards an understanding of the dynamics of human feeling and behavior.
You feel this is happening. You appear optimistic in saying this. You feel there is this slow growing understanding despite the execution of a chessman or the self-righteous voices becoming more loud than ever.
Yes, I think that it is not, you see, of all the wonders that science has yet produced, and not produced, but of all the wonders in this age of scientific investigation, the greatest wonder of all is that science itself has not, until very recently, focused itself on the nature of man and what comprises him, what are the component parts of him, what makes him do this. We do it, most amazingly, in our motivational research laboratories in order to sell people cigarettes that give them cancer, or underarm
Deodorant,
yes, the deodorants that, and we will do anything to exploit him. We will do everything that we can to study his discomforts and his hopes, his fears, his foibles, his wants, his needs. Move up to quality. We must sell him quality. We must sell him stature because he feels so inferior. This whole Playboy phenomena is interesting because it satisfies that urge of people feeling totally inadequate and totally without stature and individual reward. So we give them a kind of an ersatz.
Eroticism, perhaps.
Not only eroticism, but it's a combination of many things. But among them is a kind of mail order sophistication and meaning. Because it has the word private. It happens to have probably several million members, and it's hardly private. But at least it's clever enough to sustain the illusion.
They belong to something.
Yes, but I think that wholesale attacks on things are now being in many arenas, in many areas and conferences and congregations is now being examined, so that the quality of wholesale and frontal assault on any issue, even on this issue that we're talking about, is undergoing examination.
Well, I think everything you're saying is related to you, strangely enough. It seems not, but it is related to you as an artist, as a craftsman. I think you are obviously examining this, the saint and devil in all of us, the flaws within all of us, the rationalization. If I may be specific and approach this particular role you did, you've been told about this so many times, and yet if you can find a different vein. When you did Kowalski, it was Klorman, it was Kenneth Tynan who spoke of your performance as being lyric in quality, but something more than that. Your lively imagination at work transformed what might have been, and apparently Williams accepted this, changed the emphasis of the play. The audience, here's outwardly a brutish young man, yet the audience, to a great extent, when you were doing the role, saw it through your eyes. And in a sense, they saw Blanche Dubois for a fraud to some extent, because of the nature of your performance. Everything you've been saying, I think, is related to the way you interpret a certain role here. Here's this man. Will you go ahead?
I don't think that it's related to that, if I may disagree. I think that those are just superficial manifestations of what I have come to find as a result of uh, the examination of myself, I think that it's always in poor taste and certainly questionable to use oneself as a reference point. And in that regard and respect, I don't choose to use myself as a personal example. But I think that perhaps on the other hand, that's the only frame of reference. That's the only index, and it's the only lexicon that we can refer to. Certainly, I can't refer to your experiences about what the world is about. Can't refer to C.P. Snow. I'm not going to investigate Edith Sitwell. I must view the world from what the world is, and what the world is from the point of view of myself, because I see the world through not only my retina, but through my psychological retina. And I have to understand how I see the world, because no matter where I look, my psychological flaws, whatever they are, and we all have them, each and every one of us, we have very definite concepts of what is good, what is bad, what is usable, what is not, what is interesting, what is boring, what is peaceful, what is threatening. And I have to learn my special language about myself in order to be able to begin to communicate with somebody else. Because if I don't know where those areas are, I won't know when the information is fed back into me from somebody else, that it is automatically being deflected and bouncing off the hard core of ignorance. And I must make constant adjustments for what the other person is saying in relation to the perceptors that I must have knowledge of my own perceptors and how I receive language. For instance, you can tell me something that will irritate me, and you can express a point of view that might be unsettling to me. But then I have to ask myself, well, why is that point of view unsettling? And the first thing that I'm going to do is say, I'm going to reach into the bag full of rationalizations, and I'm going to hurl a few generalizations, which might be very smart, might be very adroit, might be very clever, and insidious in their use. But they might be completely wrong, when the real reason lies in some other area that I just can't bear to look at. And most practically seen, you see this phenomenon in the South, where people say, well, God, Jesus, then forget the niggers in here, why, hell, they'll just be running us all over. They'll ruin us. I mean, they'll ruin our race. They're monkeys. They're this and that and the other thing. And these poor, desperate people are so filled with a terror of what's going to happen if the Negroes come into power. They grab any reason under the sun, and they completely ignore, in their fear and in their distress, they completely ignore the possibility that as a result of suppressing these people for so long, they feel enormously guilty. They unconsciously anticipate a great wave of hostility, part of which is real, certainly, because the Black Muslim movement is an indication that all is not rosy with the Negro, and that what at one time passed for a happy-go-lucky, smiling
Stereotype.
Stereotype. The lurking antagonism in that creature who had undergone humiliation and hopelessness and degradation to its fullest measure is now come to life. But it seems that they now, the people in the South, are undergoing very important challenges, because each of them, they sit at home in their homes and they say, well, what's going to happen? The niggers are going to our school. Well, my God, they're right in Mississippi now. They're in Mississippi at Oxford. what's going to happen to us? Are we all going to turn into niggers? And they're asking themselves all kinds of strange questions. And eventually, as a result of this pressure, the arrest of Martin Luther King, these people going down and forcing these issues, an answer is going to be forthcoming. And sooner than we expect, people are going to be living together in peace, perhaps not entirely peace, but they're going to be living together and enjoying some measure of reasonable social intercourse, and all these dreams of what was going to happen isn't going to happen.
Well, Marlon Brando, despite your disagreement with me, I cannot dissociate what you're saying with your interpretation of certain of the roles you're playing. I'm not saying great intuition isn't at work. I don't mean it's all intelligence, but somehow I feel your particular outlook. I come back, and by the way, I have a hunch, too, a feeling that this may be unsettling you when I bring up Kowalski, because so often you've been associated with us, and here is a stereotype made, which is wrong, and we can discuss that later on, too. The other roles, I wonder if the audience is aware that you were a marvelous Marchbanks. You have a marvelous Shavian figure to Catherine Cornell's Candida. But somehow, the way you talk of evil, no, you talk of the saint and the devil in all of us, and rationalization. The reason that role, it seems to me, and apparently to a great many respected critics, is that your performance had so much vitality and intelligence and a lyric quality to it that it actually changed the author's intent. But this probably could not happen if you did not think. I'm not saying then you thought the way you do, but that intelligence was there to some extent. You disagree with this?
I'm sorry, but I can't.
Yeah.
I don't find the issue.
Yeah.
I don't quite
don't.
understand.
Let me rephrase this, Marlon. Throughout this theme, and you agree, the theme of the saint and devil in all of us, and rationalization, the saint and devil in all of us is a key problem of our day, or a key something to understand. That there's a battle in all of us, the battle of the good and the bad, and it's easy to find a scapegoat because it negates the necessity of examining ourselves. We're seeking self-examination, all of us are.
Yeah.
In the role, outwardly, I'm watching a play by Tennessee Williams, A Streetcar Named Desire. And there is a rather brutish, crude, rough young man on the stage, Stanley. And there's a rather delicate, sensitive sister-in-law. And outwardly, we might see a guy who's brutish, who destroys the sanity that was on the teetering edge anyway of a sister-in-law. And yet, because of your interpretation, and this apparently was accepted by the playwright, he's apparently added more dimension to what I had. I've heard this said, and apparently he did say it. And several of the critics said the power of your performance was such that the emphasis of the play was changed. We saw Stanley. We understood what made Stanley the man he is. And we also saw the fraud in Blanche Dubois through his eyes.
What critics?
Well, Clorman said this.
Yes, but you used the plural.
Tynan did too. Tynan was referring to Clorman and says, here is a good critic because he speaks from the standpoint of a director.
Yes, I think that Eric Bentley didn't say that, and there are many critics that didn't say that. They said something entirely different. And what I mean to point out is, I'd like to use that as an illustration. It's reminiscent of the old parable that the three blind men were walking along and they saw an elephant, and one felt the sight of it and says, "Oh, well, here's a wall. We've run into a wall." The other one grabbed the tail and says, "By no means. This is a snake with hair on the end of it." And the other one felt the leg and said, "You're both wrong. It's a trunk." Well, returning to what we were saying before, you saw what Kenneth Tynan saw. You saw what perhaps Harold Clurman saw. Now, someone else saw something different. It all depends on our particular disposition. That's always been a mystery to me, because Shakespeare has lived through the ages, because he has communicated something eternal. He has communicated something in a major way. He has said something that has affected all of us. So he has lived. But there are others who, in their day, were considered great, but who died off because they didn't have this universal touch, these universal tentacles that just spread into the future because they they lack the universality of communication. Uh, Now, people will view actors as individuals, they'll view interviewers as individuals in a different way. I'm sure that there are a lot of people listening to this program, or who have listened to it one time, who thought, well, what the hell is he talking about? My God, he gets so esoteric and so full of finesse, and he's a boy. That's a lot of nonsense. God, let's get, that's ridiculous. I don't want to hear that program. I mean, Jimmy Baldwin, who the hell is he? I mean, he was never went to school. He's what kind of intellectual pretension are they trying to avoid? Now I've described this perhaps prejudicially, but there are other people who will sit also quietly and say, "Well, I've listened to this fella, and many of his programs are interesting. Of course, he's wrong in this area, or he's wrong in that area." And I listened to that interview with Marlon Brando, and I think that he was certainly right about this issue, but of course he's completely wrong about the other. And that's because he visualizes the world differently than I do. But and you visualize the world differently from the way I do. So does Kenneth Tynan, and so does Eric Bentley, and so does Carol Clerman, and Tennessee Williams. But I only use that as an illustration to say that we will never see things. When we say eye to eye, there is no eye to eye. There are some similarities. For instance, I'm on this program because you have heard me speak. You know my sister. You know some of the things that I think about, and perhaps some of the manner in which I tend to evaluate things, which has a certain feeling. You have a certain feeling about. And I use the word feeling advisedly because it really is feeling. Now, there are many intellectuals and many non-intellectuals, or many pseudo-intellectuals or aspiring intellectuals, all of which we might be a part of, who will have something in common, a cause in common. But when they get right down to it, there are great, vast differences. But they find themselves touching on these tiny little pistols of...
Using a tentacle approach.
Yes.
And the little antenna.
Yes.
And not really hitting it.
Yes, because there is something in you that feels that it can communicate with something in me. Now, there are something in other people who are saying, who have no communication with us at all. They don't understand what we're talking about, and they're disinterested in what we're talking about. They think that what we're saying has nothing to do with reality, and it's just a lot of words and a lot of folklore, and it might very well be. We certainly can't be the judge of that. There are others who will say, "My God, that was really wonderful. These fellows certainly know what they're talking about. They're delving into issues that are dynamic, that are really attached to the central core of things." And these are the fruits of introspective labors that are going to produce some wonderful things in the world. And
They won't do that.
no. But there are some people who are saying that.
Yeah, I know.
Of course, that's completely suspect too.
I think what you said, Marlon, I'm really touched is the wrong word, but impressed very much with what you've just been saying, because you're pointing out something very important, a danger, I think, to me, I know, and obviously to you, of where I'm trying to reach you, there's no doubt of that, and I think we're making some contact, because you are a man, I think there are many facets to you. This is clear to me. This is not a public relations man's picture, because you are able, in a strange way, to articulate what many people are feeling and thinking and not doing. This matter of people seeing different things, leaving streetcar named Desire for the moment, people seeing different things, yet a great work of art, you're saying, people will see an eternal truth. Say, well, suppose you were to do Hamlet, just for the moment, an assumption. Would it not be a wholly different interpretation? Yet at the same time, you're saying we would know Hamlet's motivations very well, even though your interpretation might be wholly different, say, from Olivier's or a Gielgud's.
I think that, yes, I suppose, well, anybody that would do Hamlet would alter in some degree, in some poetic flavor, the nature of the man, his relationships, and his aspirations, his fears. Some would accentuate the confusion. Some would accentuate the poignancy. Some would very clearly delineate the philosophical uh, stalemate that Hamlet finds himself in. And according to the man, they would bring to life some part or illuminate some part of the mosaic that is Hamlet today. And I use the word mosaic because I think that accurately describes what Hamlet is, because it is a mosaic of many, many things, many, many points of view, any and all of which can be successfully illuminated and accentuated, and still without disturbing the main theme of the piece. It holds itself intact. But yes, I suppose I would reflect a different aspect as.
But at the same time, I think earlier, just touching upon, say, Williams and Shakespeare, this is not meant to denigrate Tennessee Williams at all, who's certainly one of America's foremost playwrights, perhaps the most. But the idea there's an eternal truth, there's eternal power in the writing of Hamlet that may not be in some other play. And so no matter how you interpret, you were discussing the many different interpretations of Kowalski as seen by different people. But Hamlet is a certain kind of guy. Emphases are different on part of certain performers.
Mm-hmm.
But that certain big truth is there that may not be in a playwright who is not of that stature, you see. And thus it was, say, your Kowalski, you sort of objected to the way certain people saw your role. Not object, you saw that people see so many different ways.
Yeah, I think that if a playwright has great power, well, I'll give you an example. I don't think that John, what's his name? He wrote Tea House of the August Moon. Patrick, yeah, of course. John Patrick is a great playwright. I think that he is a fine craftsman, and that he wrote a wonderful play, delightful play, an extraordinary technical virtuosity in many respects. And for instance, I feel that I did not play that role well at all. I felt that I was miscast for it. And
Zucchini.
Yes, and that I didn't do very well in it, certainly not as well as Davy Wayne or Eli Wallach. But nevertheless, that play had such strength in construction that it carried. It carried the bad performance of myself, and I think a performance less valuable than some others by Glenn Ford. And no matter, I don't think that Danny Mann directed it very well either. But whatever it was, the strength of the play, the framework, carried us through because it was successful. That is almost an actor-proof, director-proof vehicle, and it had the fiber to support the most incredible errors of interpretation and rendition, and such is the play of Tennessee Williams, Streetcar Named Desire. That's hard to. It's hard to destroy that play.
Something has occurred to me. You were speaking of John Patrick, an excellent craftsman and not an artist. Yesterday, in speaking to the high school students, you said you are a craftsman, a craftsman of, well, I would say of consummate skill, certainly. You said, but you are not an artist. You would not call yourself an artist. Why not?
Well, I didn't say that I was a craftsman. I really don't.
I say you are.
Oh, well, I think that I don't know what an artist is. I don't know really how to apply that. There are some people who will say that Yehudi Menuhin is not an artist. He is an interpretive creator. And that an artist is someone who makes an original contribution, who performs the service of creating wholly something that is separate from the work of other people. and that William Capell, who unfortunately died in this airplane crash, was not an artist, and that Leonard Bernstein is not an artist. He is an interpreter. And in that respect, I don't know how to answer it. It's, of course, my remark was certainly partly tempered by the fact that I live in a world that deals with dollars and cents in a very crass fashion. That movie production is thought of as product. It's the law of supply and demand. Now, contained within that, I think, for instance, as within the world of journalism, the Manchester Guardian certainly lives in a world of law that is controlled by the law of supply and demand, and they have to supply the demand that is made on them for a certain quality of news, certain quality of information and interpretation that will not be tolerated by, let's say, the likes of Time magazine brand of journalism. But so it's with many respects, I don't feel that it's entirely appropriate that I should say call myself an artist when I have those associations. I think that there's great pretension about artistry, and perhaps it's out of my respect for what it means to be an artist that I don't choose to call myself one. Appropriate that I should say call myself an artist when I have those associations. I think that there's great pretension about artistry, and perhaps it's out of my respect for what it means to be an artist that I don't choose to call myself one, because I think it's not something that's easily come by. And in the theater, just because you see the same kind of very practical monetary considerations governing theatrical enterprise here, and it's I don't know. I've seen artistry on television, to my way of thinking. I've seen the spirit of what I think is artistry, dedication, and beauty.
You just hate to see the word promiscuously used. The word
Yeah.
artist doesn't say big ads, the word colossal. You use the word interpreter. It's interesting. An interpreter, in contrast to a creative figure. Yet something occurs to me. You like jazz, don't you? I know that you like good jazz.
Yeah, I really don't have a good enough ear to know what is there. It's very difficult for me to communicate with jazz in a really fine way. I, of course, appreciate it, but I am not musically educated, nor am I attuned enough to be able to
Marlon,
understand.
I was leading up to something.
Yeah,
No,
please do.
you like jazz. We know the nature of jazz involves a great deal of improvisation. We know this when you see a bassy band, hear a bassy band at work, or the modern jazz quartet, whatever. There's a great deal. There's something written. Yet we know there are holes whereby the man who interprets also creates. When the guy takes his solos. So here's a question of improvisation. Yet your technique as an actor involves this too, does it not? When you directed One-Eyed Jacks, you allowed your cast to improvise a great deal. This is, I assume, unorthodox in the making of a film. Isn't there a relation between the two here? Here's a guy, in other words, your interpretation of acting involves creating as well as interpreting.
Yes, I suppose so. I don't mean to mince words about it. I certainly the actor is obliged to make a creative contribution. I think that the actor has to borrow the form of the writer to bring his contributions to life. And I certainly think that he is a creator, and I don't mean to imply that he is not, or that at least that he can be a creator. So very often he is not.
Now, I was thinking of the fact that your liking of jazz, again, perhaps I reach. This is one of my flaws. By the way, you're very good for me to interview because you point out flaws.
If you never reach, you never fall on your face.
But the thing that I like is in this conversation is that your insight into not only yourself but into me to a great extent too. The flaw that I have a tendency. I know this. This is a confession, parenthetical, of reaching sometimes to make a point and of overreaching. And I say, I may be doing it now, and I say, I think your liking jazz is quite natural because your acting is jazz, if I may use this phrase. There's a jazz technique, call it what you will, but the similar technique is used, and that the improvisation, calling upon whatever source within you.
I don't think that's true. I think that the technique that I use is primarily an intuitive one and can be seen many, many places in the world in many, many different circumstances. For instance, Eleanor Duse is a woman who, contrasted with Sarah Bernhardt, used the technique of feeling and the participation of her emotions and her intuitions in her acting. A man by the name of Alfonso Bedoya, who played in The Treasure of Sierra Madre, he played the bandit, gave a spectacular intuitive performance. He played
Yeah, with the big hat.
the gold hat. Yes, that was his wonderful performance. Never been. He doesn't know Stanislavski from a hamburger or a hot tamale, and but he gave a marvelous performance. This fellow that played in Bicycle Thief, certainly not an actor. So it's, I think, readily discernible that people that it's an ordinary technique, and it's not limited to. Well, I suppose you could. It is if what Sarah, Eleanor Duse did is jazz, then I suppose what I did is jazz too, and perhaps is an accurate phrase. I wanted to ask you a question though. You sit and you ask many questions, and it's so often. As so often is the case, we get no impression of you as a person. We don't know what goes on in your mind, and you are of enormous influence and vital concern to many people and many listeners. And I think that it perhaps is not inappropriate that I ask you a few questions about yourself. And this might startle you, but I think that you, in the spirit of communication, you have also an obligation to perhaps describe some of your feelings and your points of view. And I was wondering, what is it about this particular kind of work that interests you? Why are you preoccupied with these questions? What is the nature of your search and your furrowing out this information from people of all kinds and all manner? What kind of contribution does it make to you as a person?
This is a reversal. It's a good question, Marlon, Brando. I don't know, I suppose curiosity. I don't know, and there's a danger, this is a danger that I have of being too glib. I've got to watch this. Curiosity, I suppose. It's an easy way of saying it. I think in a way, in an indirect way, I can find out a little about myself too. And again, this is also a dangerous way out. I'm inquisitive and curious, not a peeping Tom. This is interesting. You might be interested in this. I've never asked questions that would in any sense invade the privacy of a person. I don't think that's important. A man's personal life, an actor's, a painter's, a musician's personal life, is of no meaning to me. That is personal peccadillos or strengths. But his art is. I think we find out more about the guy, the man, the artist, using this phrase again carefully, through his work. More about him through his work we can find out personally than does he drink a lot or does he go out with women a lot. That's of no significance to me. Just a little anecdote might be in order, if I may, just a little anecdote involving Diana Barrymore at the time she was in Suddenly last summer. And I remember the interview, and I was much taken with the manner in which she played this role. I was really impressed with it very much. Someone along the line says, aren't you going to ask me about, and I forgot what it was, a personal question. I said, no, it's not my concern. It's none of my business, and it's not the business of my listeners, but you as an actress are. But that's about the only way I can. I'm not answering your question, Marlon, and yet perhaps I am in a way. I enjoy this work as much as one can within the framework in which we live. Other things I'd like to do. This is the form of a confessional.
Now,
Yeah.
I'd like to point out something. You see, when I ask you a simple question such as, please describe what it is that you feel about, and what the reasons are that you do it, you find yourself, I've noticed, tense and concerned and perhaps a little confused and a little unsettled by the question. And I mean to point out, I think this bears very, very importantly on what we were talking about before, of how difficult it is really to ascertain the nature of what we do. It's very difficult. When you ask me a question about something, I really have to, I can give you a glib answer and I can just suddenly start talking and spieling. But if I want to answer the question honestly, I have to really search in my mind. And the questions that you could ask me a question, most of the questions you've asked me, I have asked myself before. The subjects I've approached, I've asked myself before, so I've come up with an answer. And whether it's right or wrong, history will bear out, or further inspection will corroborate, or not. But you could, yesterday, when these children asked me a question in this downstairs, I was stymied. A couple of times they said, what do you, I had to say, well, I never thought of that before. I don't know. I'd say I don't know. But I'm sure in this illustration we find that when someone that you're interviewing suddenly turns around and asks you a question, you have to do a great deal of communication with yourself. Suddenly, a whole system of finding and inspection and search begins. And I think that it's useful to perhaps to observe that it is not easy for any of us, when we are asked the simplest question, to give a simple answer.
I think we can give a simple answer if we're pretending. So that now the glib answer could have used curiosity. I find people exciting, and use a phrase I'm no longer going to use as often as I have in the past. Interesting human beings, again, cliches. This is easy.
Yeah.
But you did. I think I've happily fallen into your pattern here. I think I have, and I think it's good for me that I have. Because I noticed you yesterday. Again, this is what impressed me very much. Just this point, you could have been glib in answering the students yesterday, the high school editors. But you actually were taken. One, for instance, the question about the theme of success. This is talked about a great deal, material success. And yet you spoke of the classic case, the tragic case of Marilyn Monroe, whom you knew. This is a classic case. And of a sense, there's a great deal of meaninglessness to it. Yet the kid said to you, remember there was a tall Negro kid got up and said, would you change places with us if you feel this way about it? And you were stymied for a moment. Remember that?
I remember today. I was thinking about it today. There's another interesting area that seems to come up in this discussion. And I've noticed that, recently read that the members of the military forces who are directly instrumental in the setting off of atomic warheads have to be people who have to pass very strong and stringent and exhaustive psychological tests to realize and to makes absolutely sure that it will not fall to the decision, or the decision will not fall to a man who is emotionally unstable. Now, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yes, what does it mean, emotionally unstable? By their own standards, by the standards of the Army, not by the standards of anyone else. What they employ psychiatrists and psychologists to investigate these people. Now, I think with that, we begin to see the encroachment of scientific investigation as it is properly applied, and perhaps should be properly applied, to our governmental figures. Now, we examine the life of Bobby Kennedy, and let us say that he is out to get Mr. Hoffa. Now, let us say that he is not out to get Mr. Hoffa, or he is out to get the what do they call it, the mafia, not the mafia, the
syndicate.
The syndicate. He wants to get the syndicate. Now, how much of a personal challenge, how much of his personal feelings is involved in that, and how much is it just a reasonable, cold, hard, intellectual task that confronts him. It's something that only he can ask, but we can we can ascertain to a certain extent. There must be something personal about it. Jimmy Hoffa's defense of himself certainly is not completely the defense of his union. It's not his defense of Dave Beck or the principles of labor. Certainly there are, he's defending other issues, lateral issues, hidden issues that we don't see. Mr. Khrushchev and Mr. de Gaulle, Mr. Macmillan, President Kennedy are all people who are very human, perhaps all too human, in face of the most incredible responsibilities and the most awesome decisions that they have to make in this world. And it doesn't seem outside the realm of possibility or usefulness that a man like Senator Talmadge or Senator Ellender, who are notable, who are people notable for their
Segregationist.
their beliefs and their politics tempered by their political locations in this country, or people like Senator McCarthy, that it would be valuable to examine them. It would be valuable to see what an examination of Senator McCarthy might produce, or Mr. John Bircher, or Whittaker Chambers, or Paul Robeson, or Elijah Muhammad. What is in the nature of these people that makes them leaders? Now, we are not so naive in America now as to believe, we intuitively know it, but we are not so naive as to believe that Richard Nixon is devoid of feeling. When he went before the press, he made an enormous political error, and he showed himself a weakness that perhaps might have been dangerous had he been the President of the United States and been faced with the challenge of Cuba. He showed that he was a man of emotional vehemence and a kind of an emotional quality that he had heretofore denied. But we saw it. We saw it in his face. Some people are more controlled than others. We don't know what extent Mr. Kennedy makes an emotional decision. We don't know if he ever says, well, for God's sake, what's the matter with you out there? Well, why can't you do it? We don't know what he said to the governor of Mississippi over the telephone. We don't know what emotions went surging and coursing through him. But what we do know is that the world is filled with atomic bombs today, and that the unexamined life of a politician is a dangerous life, and that irresponsible and people who are unprepared to handle situations cannot afford. We cannot afford the luxury of their indulgence in positions that they do not rightfully belong in. And I think in that respect that science is slowly coming now to point the arrow home.
There are 2 points you've made here, Marlon, that to me are, at the moment they seem unrelated, and yet to me they're almost mucilage tight. You spoke of the unexamined life. Earlier you spoke of the unexamined life not being worth living. And today you spoke of the unexamined life of the politician, the man in power, being a perilous thing to all of us, what with the world being filled with atom bombs. That's one point. And earlier you spoke of emotional instability, tests being made by the Army to see that emotionally unstable men do not handle warheads. And I'm thinking of a case. You may not have heard of this man. His name is Claude Etherly. He was a major who was the navigator of the Enola Gray, that he gave the order for the bomb to be dropped on Hiroshima. Since that day, something has happened to Major Etherly. He was so disturbed. His conscience, in fact, the name of his book is Burning Conscience, was such that he could not sleep. He felt guilty. He went around the country speaking against nuclear armaments, and it was decided he is emotionally unstable. He was institutionalized. He may still be in Waco, Texas. Now, I'm wondering, by whose standards is he, whose conscience is so sharp on this matter, why is he emotionally unstable, and those who say, poor man, why are they emotionally stable? And if their conscience is not affected by this. So I'm wondering, whose life remains to be examined? Shouldn't we, the men on the street ourselves, examine our own lives? Isn't it equally as perilous for our lives being examined today, too, as well as the politicians?
Well, I don't suppose it's any more important for us now than it ever was, or I don't suppose proportionately more people are examining their lives now than they ever were before. There are some people who stand head and shoulders above the others and above the rest of us because they, for one reason or another, are obliged to find these insights at whatever cost it is to themselves and the world around them. But I certainly think it behooves everyone to do that, but not all of us are disposed that way. But in times such as this, in relation to Mr. What was
Eatherly.
it? Eatherly. Yes, I read several articles about him. I don't think actually that his that crisis that he came to was a result of his having dropped the bomb. I felt that, well, certainly that was a part of it, but that was probably just the form that his anxiety took. It certainly helped, but I think that whatever difficulty he had and whatever complexes developed came from a much earlier time. But certainly we will have to examine our politicians. They will have to examine themselves, and we will have to examine them much more closely, because the responsibility of the politician is much greater today than it ever was. And I think that these influences slowly will make their concentric influences all felt all over the world, and I think that day eventually will come when men like Khrushchev, Mao Zedong, Sukarno, Sigmund Rhee, Chiang Kai-shek, de Gaulle, all of these men, in whatever time we find them, will be men of men chosen more carefully through examination of themselves and examination of the peoples, because of the responsibility, because of the enormous responsibility that they hold.
Marlon, remember what you said earlier. I agree with what you say. Remember you said something earlier about seeking the enemy without, how much easier to seek the enemy without, and I'm coming now to us, you, me, everybody, we of the free world. What about us? You see, we must examine our lives and I know I sound self-righteous, but the self-righteousness is our danger as well as the other side's too.
Well, yes, but I think that that kind of knowledge and depth is reserved only for a few special people who are willing to go through, to make the journey through the night sea, as someone once said it, to find one's centers. And whether it is found through the investigations or the applications of the mystique of Zen Buddhism, or psychoanalysis, or some other active, vital, inspecting technique or philosophy, they will find it. But I think it's too optimistic to suppose. I don't think that history ever indicates that people en masse are willing to make that enormous sacrifice.
But I'm coming back again to this matter of the life having a meaning, really, for all of us, even the most doltish of men.
Well, life is always given meaning by people, whether it's having a lot of money, or being sexually virulent, or I don't mean virulent, I mean virile.
Well, virulent can at times be intermingled, I'm sure. In our day, which we dramatize it so well and glamorize it, and it's...
Or having power, a status symbol, or a lot of property or influence, or whatever it is that symbolizes success and meaning for people. People go on pursuing it. I think that that it is now clear there are certain techniques that have been developed and are being developed applied to the human being, perhaps offers a fairer explanation and a more useful one as to what he is and how he works and why he works. We constantly are reminded that criminals and people of misfortune of that kind are being examined from the point of view of being ill, not from the point of view of being sick. And gradually those experiments and their findings come down to the everyday level, of course, which is always dangerous too. I think this sort of preoccupation with the psyche and this
I follow what you're saying. See, the reason, there's a tangential reason I'd raise this. Yesterday, in speaking to the high school students, we spoke of they asked you about who are your favorite directors, and you mentioned the Japanese director Kurosawa, and I was delighted when you mentioned the film Ikiru. Here's a perfect case of a director, and the central figure is seeking the meaning of life. The man is dying of cancer. He is a civil servant. He has a job of not much meaning, and suddenly has 6 months to live, and what the hell is life all about? And it was such a beautiful, magnificent thing, and you were moved as I was, and I'm sure a great many were who saw it. That's what he's saying, in a way. What the hell is the meaning of life? What does it mean? And this, I think, is a picture that's so universal in its impact. It applies today even more than ever, because time will be very short unless we, all of us, this is my own personal feeling, it's connected with this great work of art to me, and you pointed it out yesterday. That's why, in a way, in my mind, these indirect questions are all part of one bundle, really.
Well,
why were you moved by that film?
Well, I was moved by the display of character that this man had, that by his bravery and his refinements as a person. How little it was for him to want to make a municipal recreation area for children, but that was, in his last moments of life, his glory. And there was something very touching about that. The man was purified, and he became whole and dedicated. And I think wherever we see that kind of dedication, it's moving to us.
It gave his life a meaning, too, though, didn't it? A man who was a cipher till then, seemingly a cipher till
Well,
then.
let us not say it gave his life a meaning, but it gave his life more meaning. All our lives have meaning. Your life as an interviewer, as someone who was curious about the common point of view and the esoteric point of view. The secretary who sits across the room talking on the telephone has a meaning to her life. I have a meaning to my life, diversified as it might be. But how much that meaning is valuable to us, I think, varies from person to person. How real our meanings are to ourselves, I think, varies from person to person, and there's no way to judge that. I can't judge the realness or the usefulness that your meaning has for you, and it's difficult for you to judge that for me. It's something that, because we're different organisms, it's something we must judge for ourselves.
On the subject of meaning, this is just a free association, a word meaning, meaningful. Yesterday, in speaking to the students, you said there are certain roles you seek. You receive many offers, of course, roles that are meaningful to you. And I know that you're very much involved, I believe, I suspect, emotionally as well as artistically, with the film, The Ugly American, that will be opening in Chicago soon. You chose this film, a role in this film, rather than, I'm sure you rejected a great many offers. Why?
Well, I felt that it was, there were many comments that, and many things that I felt convinced about that I would like to articulate, many sentiments and observations that I felt a kinship with, that were contained in this drama, certainly not all, many of them I disagree with, and some I wish had been more, and some I wish had been less. But nevertheless, the total impression of the film does share to a great extent my personal feelings, as well as George's and Mel Tucker's and Stuart Stern's. This was a picture made in concert.
Point out George England, the producer-director of the film.
Yes, and Stuart Stern was the writer. Mel Tucker was the producer, and that was why I chose this film. Actually, it wasn't the part so much as it was the film itself.
Here again, meaning. See, well, again, I know you may disagree, and it's very interesting. I sense this. You don't mind my saying this, is a personal comment. Whenever I speak of your art, you say you're not an artist, or your skill, or your craft. You shy from it, so I won't ask this, because you are obviously, I sense this, and I think clearly you're a man who probes continuously. But I know our time is short. You have to catch a plane soon to go elsewhere. But I cannot help but still be moved by you and the high school students. You yourself, you're aware that your life, your work on screen has had tremendous impact on young people through the years. And as far as I'm concerned, very much for the better. Whether they be rebellious or what, I think they question in their own way, each does in his own way. But something that happened toward the end, when you yourself, you were quite surprised by the questions asked by the students. You had expected, as you said, the squealing kids, and the questions to a great extent were pertinent, were thoughtful. And then you said that somewhere along the line you had lost connection with this generation, as indeed I have. There's a new generation coming up, I feel. Can you remember your reactions to yesterday, as well as this reflect your feelings about the young 17, 18-year-old kids today, and how they would differ? I'm older than you, but when you were 17, 18, and I know my period.
How they differ is something I don't know, and that's the result of the ineffable distance between one age and another. If it were easy to communicate with another age, then we'd never have any trouble with learning, because all that was ever written, all that was ever useful has been written, rather, and is certainly accessible in literature and art and philosophy. But we read it, and we might as well be reading hieroglyphics, because you can't learn how to live except through living. And you can't communicate things that you've learned in any way. Everybody has to learn it for themselves, and it's just hopeless to try and cram down or cram into the brains of others. First of all, we don't have any right to do that, I don't think, to invade the minds of others. I think everyone has certainly a right and a duty to come to their own conclusions. But I was impressed by the fact that at one time I was, in some respect, a hero of the young, and now I am not. Someone else has taken my place because I've gone beyond. I'm no longer a teenage symbol, and someone else has done it. But there again, they have their own gods, their own worshippers, their own heroes. I've come to realize that the hero with 1,000 faces is the hero of 1,000 different people, and that I've outworn my usefulness as a hero to the teenager. They want someone else, and the spirit of rebellion stated in a different way. And I was impressed with that, and also with the strangeness of looking down the funnel of the years into a time when I was 18, 19, and 20, and that it might as well be 100 years away. It's not just 20 or whatever it is.
Have these, again, this is a cursory observation on your part and mine. We perhaps neither of us is in too close a touch with kids. Do you sense the more cool? This is known as the cool era. The cool. Do you think the kids you saw, the students the other day, were more cool than your contemporaries when they were 18?
Yes, I think they tend to be more cynical, more questioning. Well, they're assaulted by so many lies every day, the false lies on television, the attitude of the announcers, the way the products are pushed, the sort of heisting and psychological second story men that handle and push around. Everybody knows it's a lie, and that's so much that we live as a lie. But and it's taken for granted that we live in terms of lies. But the question isn't so much how whether it's true or not, but how much of a lie there is in it. And I think that they're so loaded with false values on every hand that they become a little cynical, and I think it's a healthy reaction. I think it's something done in self-defense, and they don't believe it. The kind of world, the kind of Christian world that is taught them in the churches, and the kind of Christian world that they meet on Madison Avenue is vastly different. And there's a large schism in our society as a result of this endless, relentless push for the mother money.
I must ask you this, Marlon. It's a personal question of you, what you said. I know you're the father of 2 children. What do you tell them? I mean, in view of the framework in which we live, surrounded as we are by the lie, the big lie, the little lie, perhaps not Hitler's big lie, but lies that are large enough, certainly. What do you tell them?
Tell them about what?
About the world we live in today, or that's a general question. What kind of people? What kind of people do you want them to be? I think that's.
Well, I don't tell them anything. I tell them something when they ask me. They say, "What is this?" or "Why is this?" and I give them. I try to explain it to them as simply as I can. For instance, people have come up to me, much to my discomfort, while my son was there, and gone through this rather embarrassing ritual of asking for my autograph and the magical touch, rubbing the touchstone, the lucky stone of the hero, and looking adoringly and worshipfully at this symbol, strange, peculiar manifestation of our funny life here in America. So I was signing this autograph. I couldn't do otherwise. I always sign for children because they really don't know any better. But it's so distressing when you see adults indulging in this sad talisman-seeking kind of thing. But sometimes you just have to do it because you don't want to be offensive. And anyhow, he was there. I happened to be with my older boy. And he said, "Daddy, why does he want your name?" Well, I had to scrape the inside of my brain to give him a decent answer. I said, "Well, I don't know why they want my name. Some people do that. Some people just think it's lucky if they have things. They have rabbit's feet and they have little charms and
You have talisman.
yeah, talisman and some people like me and they want a memento from having been near me, and so they want me to scribble something. But it was quite difficult to answer. I think that the task set out for them is enormous. I think to be the sons of a famous man is an awful burden. And it's awfully tough because I'll have to live up and be constantly known as my sons. I will not be known as their father. They'll be known as my sons. And that's an ugly, ugly burden. And I hope to find some way to protect them, if I can, to bring them up in some place where they are protected from this thing. In other places in the world, it doesn't matter who I am, and I'm just another two-legged person walking around. But when they go to school, then they very quickly become aware of the fact that their father is somebody who was somehow an important commodity in everyone's home and everyone's life. And I think he's seen, you can't keep the kids away from the television. You can't be there all the time, and they see it. It's an enormous problem, and I wish I could spare them that. But they'll just have to bullet through as best they can, and with all the help I can give them.
You know, the phrase you just used then, you are an important commodity, is what you said. An important commodity. So you, Marlon Brando, sense this. It is the commodity they worship, really, isn't it? The symbol of you. You're aware of this?
Yes, I think that we're all bought and sold in one way or another. A few of us aren't, but there's a price tag on all of us. If you see ideas on television sold, you see political ideals that are bought. I mean, the mere expression of the word "I don't buy that" comes from a kind of mercantile invasion of the American mind, the values of buying and selling, and you can even buy stature, as we discussed before, by being in the Playboy Club, or move up to quality by drinking a certain beer, and it's perfectly absurd and sad, but nevertheless, that's the world we live in.
Martin, you're obviously a thoughtful man, and you are in a certain position that is, as you sense, not too enviable. Many envy you indeed, and yet I know you do not feel this way about it. You've explained why graphically, vividly enough. Yet how do we keep the kids? This is the question. Obviously they're cynical because the lie's about, but isn't there some way, and this is the Pollyanna in me, that life, there is a better way of living. In other words, if the child becomes the cynic, he's a half man, isn't he? The cynic is the half man, isn't he? How then can he be the full man in our time? I don't know whether you can answer it. I don't know who can. But again, I come back to your kids, to your children, you see.
No, I can't answer it. I've done the best I can with my age and my life. I don't think that I'm a raging success in my life. I don't think that I've achieved certain things that I would perhaps like to have achieved within the realm of my own soul. But then we do what we can. We can't do any better than we can, and we use the techniques and the reserve fuel tanks that are afforded us. And maybe his life will be less pressured in some way. Maybe it's so hard to tell when nations and empires rise and fall within a period of 25 years, and they're fantastic revelations by science. It'll be difficult to predict how difficult the world will be. But
or how good, perhaps.
Yes.
Or how good, perhaps.
But as I get older, I have become more convinced that a simple way of life, a life that is directly related to living, the getting of food, and the making of it, the preparing of it, the work that is directly related to living, such as the kind of work that you find in almost any primitive community, I think is fundamentally more wholesome. I think that richness and success has just so poorly distorts life. It hasn't really meant anything. I think that it tends to mean something because people think, well, they'll have security, but they don't. We don't have economic security here. We're little islands separated one from another. If you starve, you have to go to the state, but you're a social reject. If you're poor and if you're not successful, there's something there's something sick about you, something malignant and unusable. People don't like to be around failure, at least failure in the common sense. And they can't understand. People can't understand other people turning their back on material goods and not taking full advantage of it when you can.
Other people, I think, again, speaking to the students, you mentioned Tahiti. This was the place that apparently, which you grew most fond. There, then, material success is not what it is here.
Well, they have no sense of what it is to have or have not. They have bananas, they have coconuts, they have breadfruit, they have fish in the lagoon. If they want a house, they stick some palm fronds together and a few hunks of wood, and for a few pennies they can get a pareo, and they live perfectly happy there. The Tahitians don't work, except when they want something specific. But that will, of course, change when the marketing psychologists invade that area, when the world communication system is complete. Then if the Japanese flood the South Pacific with a lot of television sets, then the marketeers will invade the realm of the Tahitian also and force a market, force him to want things, tease him into it, cajoling him into it, shame him into it, humiliate him into it, saying you're poor, you're backward, you're no good, you're not civilized, you have no teeth, you're this, that, whatever it is. However, they always shame us.
Robert Flaherty's Moana of the South Seas, way back, the documentary was of that theme. But recently, Marlon, this very point, Tahiti, the point you make, the Australian Broadcasting Company recently had a documentary quite powerful of civilized, quote-unquote, invasion of Tahiti and what was beginning to happen, the very thing you're describing. Perhaps then there will be no place that Melville sought anymore. This leads to this crazy question of the technological age we live in. It is a value, is it not, the machine? The machine is not evil per se, but it's the way, certainly, it's being used.
Yes, I think that America is not finished with its pioneering in this world, oddly enough. We are pioneering a great many things. Certainly, we're pioneering through an age of the inundation of our lives with material things, the inundation of our minds with material considerations. And so often we're criticized as a tinker-toy society and a gadget-oriented civilization. And we're the butt of so many jokes as a result of that. But I think when you go to Paris now, or Germany, or you go to Italy, you find the same kind of merchandising psychology, the same kind of mercantile thinking. The forced markets so often remind me of forced feeding geese when they stuff a metal pipe down a goose's throat and pour corn in it to swell his liver. That's what they've done to us. They've swollen our liver. We've done that to ourselves, and it'll take time for us to understand what we're doing to ourselves. That it really doesn't mean anything. That the rat race, the conniving and the racing lust that we have for success finds us counterfeit.
This brings us back, doesn't it, Marlon, to the examining, the self-examined life. It brings it back to that again. So again, to each. I'm thinking about you in that plane, and this has been a very rewarding, certainly for me, and I know for the audience, conversation with you. You turned the tables on me earlier in the interview and asked me a question, why I'm doing what I'm doing. I never really asked you this, but I will now, Marlon. Why are you an actor? Why did you become an actor?
I don't know. The reasons that we do things are lost, I think, in the very subtle nature of our being. I suppose I once thought that if you took a handful of sand and threw it up into the air in the wind, you could predict, if you knew all the factors, the weight of each grain of sand, its location in the mass, its shape, its specific density, the the application of the pressure, the force of the wind. Theoretically, you could predict what would happen if you knew all the factors and where each sand grain was located, exactly what was happening in its relation, its weight, its collision force in relation to the mass. But I'm trying to look out the window.
It's okay.
But I don't think that that's possible. And in the same way, it's not possible to understand what we do, and I can't. I don't know why. I can make guesses at it. I can make guesses at it and probes at it, but I don't suppose I could really tell you why. It's lost in the tangle of all the things that make up what I am as a person, which is infinitely complex and intricate, and perhaps beyond our perception, at least beyond mine. But I think that something very useful has come out of this discussion, and many of the discussions I've had recently. I think that exchanges of this kind with people, there is there's a growth in communication and a hunger for it. On television, you see so many shows going, discussion shows, and you wonder, well, when they first came out, well, what the hell are they doing? They're just sitting there talking, and gradually you came to realize that there was a hunger for conversation, for exchange of ideas. And I think this is a really remarkable thing, because whereas it took 1,500 years for Buddhism, I think, to come from India to Japan, it takes the twist 37 hours to get to Australia, maybe less, whatever it is, a week. And so when new, worthwhile, dynamic ideas, conceptions come, we can, there can be a very quick exchange of them and application of that knowledge. And I think that's wonderful. It's also dangerous, too, because it's with the television and the radio and whatnot, it's so easy to train, poison, and discipline people's minds as they do in Red China. They have loudspeakers that blast from morning till night, make announcements from morning till night, rubbing and scrubbing this propaganda into the souls and the bones and the minds of these children. The Nazis did that, and it was very difficult. There was an article that I read which dealt with the denazification of emotionally disturbed children in Germany after the war, because these children were brought up as Nazis. They were told to tell on their parents, and they became very neurotic and full of problems about that. And it's very hard to eradicate that. Even now there are people walking around who still are diseased from that malignant influence.
Using your cue, Marlon, of looking within ourselves to, we too have it, they have it, and we have it in our way, as you explained earlier with the magic box continuously, with that particular kind of brainwashing too, whether it be the good cigarette that is better than the other, or whether it be this particular deodorant that is better than the other. It's a different way, a lesser extent, and yet I think what's come out of this is our own sense of the need to be more aware, too, of our... Earlier you spoke of... The very first question asked about pretense, and you spoke of the pretender in all of us. Be aware of this. One last question, Marlon, and I release you. Anything that you'd care to say we haven't talked about? This is the catch-all. Is anything during this past hour and a half or so that's on your mind or around it that you'd care to say?
No, except that I might point out that I've had so many microphones stuck in my face in the past 3 weeks since I've been on this 35,000-mile tour. I've often asked myself the question, as I find myself talking, What are you talking about? Why is the microphone stuck in your face? I know that if I was a dentist from Duluth, that it might not be my face that the microphone was stuck in. And I find myself giving my opinions, but always at the same time wondering why. Why are my opinions asked? And I wonder sometimes if not this very moment is not a manifestation of the kind of thing we were talking about. Why me and not you? Why me and not my secretary sitting across the room with a waiter? But I suppose you do. You do interview all kinds of people, don't you?
Again, that phrase, quote unquote, the artist, because I think he to me is an attractive guy. He may be neurotic in his own way as all of us are, but there's something about this man who explores. And not everybody, I'd say generally someone in the field of what you might call the fine and lively arts. It's a general phrase. Somebody who is exploring one way or another.
But in Gray's eulogy in a country church chart, he says, "Full many a flower is left to blush unseen." And you never can tell. I recommend that book again that Gerald Sykes wrote called the Hidden Remnant, which deals with this, because we never know where we'll find that person. Certainly we won't find him categorically. I don't believe, as you do, that the artist is a man who necessarily is the articulator of wisdom or knowledge. I think you'll find it in the mason or the shoemaker or the farmer, or maybe a Tahitian who can't even articulate it.
I didn't mean it that way, Marlon. Just to correct it, to give you, since you've asked, perhaps the most powerful guest I've ever had, too, was Big Bill Broonsy, a wholly unlettered blues singer, perhaps the wisest man I've known, and a Cockney waitress in London. These may be my two most exciting guests. So I meant in the general sense, it's someone who in one way or another explores, and often it's because of the nature of his work, the quote-unquote artist. But that's the idea.
You know, it would be interesting, I would think, sometime to get Criminal and ask him. You did?
Marvelous. Jimmy Blake.
Jimmy
Jimmy
Blake?
Blake has spent 25 years in the pokey. He's an artist, though. He's close to me to the American Genet. Jimmy Blake is an articulate convict. And this last thing, perhaps you can end on the subject of pretense, he says he found life in prison less, as he left it today, less the prison than the world outside.
That's wonderful. Listen, at that point, I think that's a fitting close. I do want to say that a lot of strife and Sturm und Drang come my way because I am a saleable commodity, and I get bought and sold all the time, and it's rare that I can really sit down and give my point of view unedited and not invented, and to be judged for what I've said as a result of saying it completely. And anyhow, I'm very grateful to you for that opportunity, because so often it is unpleasant to see yourself so rudely misrepresented. And I thanks very much, Studs, and goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlon Brando. Thank you very much. And I know I speak for the listeners that we're delighted that Marlon Brando has come out and said his piece. I think now we're closer to the man than we've been. The image, one thing, the man, something else. Marlon Brando. Thank you very much.